Chapter 5, Day 10. Today we're going to look at perpendicular lines. So for a review, I'd like you to try these two questions to see if you are understanding parallel lines, and then restart the video to see if you got your answers correct and for explanations. Here's what you should have gotten for your answers. For the first one, all you needed to do was pick out the slope from the given line, 1/3. It already gave you the y-intercept, so you plug them into y equals mx plus b. So you'd get y equals 1/3 x plus 8. For number 2, again, pick out your slope of -4 from your given line, but then you need to use your point, the x and y from your point, into the equation y equals mx plus b. So you're going to put the 10 and the -8 in for x and y, the slope in for -4, and then solve for b. And then again, you have m and b, and it's just easy enough to write the equation. So we're going to look at perpendicular lines. The first thing we're going to do is review what kind of numbers will give you a product of -1. For example, what number when multiplied by 3? So we're looking for what number when we multiply it by 3 will give us an answer of -1. So 3 times what number gives us -1? Well, we can actually just solve that. And so if we divide each side by 3, what we get is x would equal -1/3. So if we take 3 and we multiply it by -1/3, again, notice we get -3 over +3, which equals -1. So x equals -1/3. Well, what you should notice is that these numbers are called opposite, meaning it's a different sign, positive or negative, reciprocals. Okay? So basically, the opposite part switches the sign. Okay, so positive or negative. And the reciprocal flips the fraction. And we're going to need that for our work in perpendicular lines. So another pair would be like 2 and -1/2, because remember this is 2/1. Or if we start with a fraction like -2/5, okay, then we take the opposite sign, which makes it positive, and we flip the fraction. All right, so what is the opposite reciprocal of the following numbers? Okay, I'll do the first one. Opposite reciprocal, opposite, this is a positive number, so it makes it negative. We flip the 4/3 to make it 3/4. Okay, you try the next two. You should get 1/3 and you should get -1/4. Again, switch this positive or negative part and flip the fraction. And if there is no number under your fraction, you just put a 1 under it. You try the next two. Okay, so the next one is just 2 because it's positive and you flip the fraction. And this one's kind of tricky. It's 0/1, so that makes it 1/0, which is undefined. Remember, we can't define division by 0. So, perpendicular lines that intersect to form a right angle. And they are going to have, their slopes are going to be opposite reciprocals of each other. So, again, in words, two non-vertical lines are perpendicular if and only if the product of their slopes is -1. Vertical lines are perpendicular to horizontal lines because we already talked about that this is an undefined slope and this has a slope of 0. And we already showed you that 0/1 or 1/0 divided by 0, that's what opposite reciprocals are. So, it says find the pairs that have perpendicular slopes. So let's take a look at the slopes. We have a slope of 2/3. So this slope is 2/3. what would be a perpendicular slope would be negative 3 over 2. So these right here would be perpendicular. So A is perpendicular to B. That's the symbol for perpendicular. You'll learn that more in geometry. It's fine if you just write perpendicular, but we can say that A and H. I said B. Whoopsie. So A and H. So let's find another pair. Let's just write a couple of these slopes. Okay, so what is the slope here? Slope is negative 3. So the perpendicular slope would be positive 1/3. Can you see any positive 1/3? Here slope for letter J is positive 1/3. So we have B and J. So B is perpendicular to J. Because again, if you look at their slopes, this slope is negative 3 and this slope is 1/3, so they're opposite reciprocals. All right, your turn. See if you can find another pair. Pause the video and see if you can find another pair of perpendicular lines. Okay, well, there's actually another pair of perpendicular lines, and that would be D right here, which has a slope of negative 1/2, and F right here, which has a slope of 2. So D is perpendicular to F. Now, what you might not have discovered or might not have realized is that these two lines, are actually perpendicular because this line goes to the y-axis, so this is a horizontal line, so your m equals 0, and this is a vertical line, and your slope is undefined. So C is also perpendicular to E. And the last two pair, they actually are perpendicular as well. So we could also say that G and I, because this slope is 5 and this slope is negative 1/5. So we could say G is perpendicular to I. All right, so that gives us some work about looking at slopes that are perpendicular, and those lines will be perpendicular because they're opposite reciprocal slopes. So now it says find the equation of the line that is perpendicular. Okay, so it's perpendicular to this given line. Okay, well, here's what's tricky. This slope is 2, but that's not the number we want to use. The perpendicular slope is equal to the opposite reciprocal. So this is the slope we're going to use. This is the m that we are going to use. And now it's the same process that we did with parallel lines. We take this point that we're given and the slope right here, and we write the equation y, so 3 equals our slope, negative 1/2, times our x value, plus b. So 3 is equal to negative 4 over 2, which is negative 2. Again, you can use your calculator on these. And then add 2 to each side. And so b equals 5. So your y-intercept is 5. So now you have enough to write the equation. It will be y equals negative 1/2 x plus 5. So it's similar to what we did with parallel lines, only the difference is we have to not use the same slope of the given line, but we have to use the opposite reciprocal slope with the given point. Okay, so your turn to try this one. See if you can write the equation of the line that's perpendicular to this given line. So we want it to be perpendicular to this given line. and goes through this point. So pause the video, see if you can do it, and then restart the video for an explanation of how to do it correctly. Okay, so this slope of this line is -5/2. So the slope that is perpendicular is going to be the opposite, which makes it positive, and the reciprocal, which makes it 2/5. So here's the slope that we need to use. And here is the y-intercept, or this is not the y-intercept, but this is our given point. So we have to use our x and our y. So remember, if you need a little bit more explanation, we start with y equals mx plus b. Now we take our slope that we are given. That's our perpendicular slope goes in here. So that's going to be 2/5. Oops. Yep. So that's going to be, it kind of looks like my line is going at the x. So let's try that again. It's going to go in here for m. So that is going to be 2/5. The x part is going to be my 10. And the y part is my -7. And then we have y equals mx plus b. And now we just need to solve that. This is going to give us 20 over 5, which is 4. So that's going to give us 4 plus b equals -7. And then we subtract 4 and we get b equals -11. So now we have our b value. We can highlight that. And now we have enough to write our equation. Our equation is y equals our slope of that's perpendicular to that line, 2/5, x minus 11. All right, last question. And this can be a little bit trickier. So notice that we have a y equals line. It goes to the y-intercept, or the y-axis. So its slope is 0. So the perpendicular slope, okay, perpendicular, so the perpendicular slope is going to be undefined. Okay, so it is going to be a horizontal line. So it is going through the x-axis, so it is going to be an x equals line. So all you really need is this x value, and this is the line x equals -2. So that is our equation. That's just kind of intuitively knowing what's happening. But remember, you could always go ahead and graph this and see what this looks like on your graph. So here's your x-axis, here's your y-axis. The first line is y equals 5. So right here. So you want it to go through the point -2, 8. So -2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And you want it to be perpendicular, so you know it's going to look like this. And it's going through the x-axis at -2, and so that's why it's x equals -2. Okay, this one you have to put the equation into slope-intercept form first to get the slope. This is a little trickier. I'm going to stop the video here, but I will work this out in the notes for some extra practice for you. But otherwise, this is the end of day 10.